ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. From last time we started studying a new chapter of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, and the new chapter name is Realization, and it is based upon Kathopanishad, delivered in London 29th October 1896. And as an introduction, Swamiji told many important points, and Swamiji is using the force of his personality to lift our mind, that we should remember. The whole Jnana Yoga is meant to change our consciousness, and the very name, realization, tells us that we have to experience the reality. Today it is an idea in our mind at the most. If it becomes real, that is called realization. Real means it should become a fact of our experience. Then only we can call it real. Till then it's an idea only. It's a very important point. Though in order to make our mind oriented, we studied practical Vedanta first. But even within this Jnana Yoga, Swamiji is emphatically telling that we have to experience it. Only theory will not do. Now let us hear what Swamiji has made. First point Swamiji has made is the universe we know is limited by our senses. Nobody can guarantee that this is the whole truth, because we know as much as our mind plus our indriyas can tell us. Science or whatever, hypothesis is no proof. Hypothesis is no fact unless we can see that, unless we can perceive that. And so, Swamiji says the universe which we perceive is only through our five senses. That is the first point. So, if we try to find a solution of the whole of universe, then it's very wrong to take a partial data and to build a theory of the whole universe from that. Second point Swamiji is making is that we are experienced by our five senses and we are thinking by our mind, which is a human mind, and necessarily it will be a thought of the human mind. It will not be the reality. So two defects come when we think of the world by so-called rational methods. Here I remember, let me tell the name because I am receiving complaints from our listeners. There is a school called the Arsha Vidyalaya, and they are preaching outright, continuously. There is nothing called meditation, there is nothing called experience, there is nothing called samadhi, there is nothing called mystic experience. We have to understand Vedanta and we are the Vedantis. Now this is as much poisonous for humanity as to say that we do not want to change. And, well, mostly foreigners, elite people in India, they attend their camps and they think we have become Vedantis. Somebody asked me, is it not confusing? I said, they are outright cheating people. Can that be Vedanta? Listen to what is Vedanta? They say Shankar Siddhanta will save us. Can any Siddhanta save us? Or realization will save us? And what is Vedanta? That which is given in Upanishads. So we have to listen to the Upanishads. And what Kathopanishad is telling, that Swamiji is introducing here. So immediately he says, two defects have come in our theorizing of the universe, whether by science, whether by Western philosophy, whether by any thinking so-called rational. Firstly, our universe is that universe which we see, feel, touch only by our five senses. Secondly, our thinking apparatus is our mind, which is a human mind, which has limitations by itself, And in several lectures, Swamiji has shown, with the help of the Western German philosopher Immanuel Kant, that our mind is made of time, space and causation, and in this mind we cannot know the real nature of a particle of dust, what to think of the absolute reality. So, thinking is wrong, data is wrong. Then, firstly, we have to find a universe which is inclusive. That means our universe is only the physical universe, but there is a psychological universe, what our minds think, how our minds behave, and there is a spiritual universe. By spiritual universe, Swamiji means the experiencing personality. Bhavarajya. People experience God in so many ways. And so there is a spiritual world. So the whole world, when we say, we have to explain together the physical, the psychological, the moral, the spiritual world. That is the next point. Now, another point is that the more we see from outside, the more divergent in this universe. And so we cannot get the idea even of the entire universe. What we can do? Even if we travel in the physical world, in the psychological world, we cannot get any idea even of the entire world together. On the other hand, if we go to the center, from there we can get a view of the entire universe. So, because we cannot get a view of the comprehensive universe, Swamiji is telling we must go to the center. Now, where is the center of the universe? Suppose we go to penetrate the outside world, we are going away from our own self. If we try to enter somebody's mind, we are going away from ourselves. But if we enter ourselves, how much we have to enter? We have to leave the indriyas behind, we have to leave the mind behind, we have to leave the I consciousness behind. Then only we can reach the real center from where we can view the whole world. So that is what we have to do. Then by that process, we will go out of our mind also. We will think of the reality with the basis of reality itself. Always we have found that when we think of the nature of Brahman, from there we get answers to all our questions, not from our analysis. So that is the vintage view. That is the 5 points Swamiji has made as an introduction. Data is insufficient, instrument is insufficient. We have to find a comprehensive universe. Unable to find it, we have to go to the center of the comprehensive universe. Center cannot be outside ourselves, so we have to find our own center. In the process, we are going beyond our mind also. These days, Swamiji says, the Kathopanishad has given us. And he says that the Kathopanishad has given us figuratively. That means through a story. So then Swamiji comes to this story and informs us that Nachiketa and Yama dialogue is the story. And he introduces Nachiketa. We need not go through the story again. But he asks his father, to whom you are giving me. The father becomes vexed and says, I will give you to the god of death. And then he goes to the god of death. And then God was not in his home. When he comes back, 3 days and nights Nachiketa has to wait. He does not take food even. So Yama says that you have made me a debtor. I must redeem myself, so I give you 3 boons. Because he has given 3 boons, Nachiketa asks first boon as the representation of entire duties of man. That let my father be not angry, let him recognize me when I come back. Yama grants it immediately. Second boon is the ancient thought of heaven. In all religions we find this heaven, and so a life better than today's life is heaven, and Nachiketa asks to be taught about that knowledge which will give him heaven, and Yama teaches that also. Now comes the third boon, and there Nachiketa's real personality comes out, and he asks that when a man dies, some people say everything is over, some people say no, not over. This is the doubt, you please explain it to me. Now this is not a theoretical question. This is not that any intelligent man can understand. It is only a man with vairagya who can understand. So that is the next point Swamiji is making, that unless one has non-indulgent towards this world, one cannot get an idea even of the reality. And so, vairagyam is the minimum condition, and so Yama, instead of telling him the reality, he starts tempting him in all possible ways. And when Nachiketa resists that temptation and asks, there is nothing equivalent to the knowledge of reality in this whole world. And then only Yama comes to the inner tendencies of man, called by Kathopanishad as Shreya and Preya. The ultimately beneficial is called Shreya, that which is pleasing is called Preya, and this should not hinder Nachiketa on the way also. So, Yama analyzes them and says, you have withstood all the temptations, so you will get the reality. After this, and then we read also from the Kathopanishad. We go back to certain paras from yesterday's reading. We now get a very developed idea of renunciation and Vedic morality, that until one has conquered the desire for enjoyment, the truth will not shine in him. That is the starting point. Vedic morality, renunciation and Vedic morality. So long as these vain desires of our sense, vain, because they do not give us pleasure really. So long as these vain desires of our senses are clamoring, and as it were dragging us outwards every moment, making us slaves to everything outside, to a little color, a little taste, a little touch, notwithstanding all our pretensions, how can the truth express itself in our heart? Pretensions may be, we may pretending to be big philosopher, but until there is clean purity in the heart, the truth will not shine. Yama said, that which is beyond never rises before the mind of a thoughtless child deluded by the folly of riches. Thoughtless child. This world exists, the other does not. Thinking thus, they come again and again under my power. This Swamiji is reading from the Kathopanishad, mind you. To understand this truth is very difficult. That means you have to go very, very deep. Many, even hearing it continually, do not understand it. This is all from Kathopanishad. Sharonayapi bahubiryo na labhyo, shrinuvantopi bahubiryo na vedu. For the speaker must be wonderful, Ashcharyasya Vakta, Kushalosya Labdha, so must be the hearer, because the man who knows the truth is really wonderful, and the man who can receive it also has a transcendental tendency. The teacher must be wonderful, so must be the taught. Neither is the mind to be disturbed by vain argument. Naishat tarke namati. This is such an important point. Kathopanishad is telling. What do those harsh people tell? Is it not nonsense? I had a big opportunity once. I will inform you people. In Tiruchi, I was in Coimbatore. In Tiruchirappalli, the Sringeri Shankaracharyas, you know, junior and senior Shankaracharyas. They have an establishment in Trichy or Tiruchirappalli. They had come there and they had a 3-day function. Now for 1-day meeting, they came to invite us in the Coimbatore, and the Coimbatore head requested me to go. Let me tell you a little history. One lady was the secretary of that Trichy association. She asked me on what topic you will speak. I said I will choose from Vivek Chudamani, Shankaracharya saying, Moksha sadhana samagram bhakti reva gariyasi. She outright rejected. She said people will not listen to that. But we want you to speak. Then I said I will shift to Shankara's statement in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya in the beginning, that we are struggling to realize the truth and we have a desire to realize the truth. Till then the desire will not stop. And he also is telling, we know the Brahman, but we want to have experience of that Brahman. The word Jidnyasa is Shankaracharya explained as not curiosity. That desire which will not stop till we know and get Brahman. That is Jigyasa. And we know Brahman, Bhuta Vastu Vishayatvat. It is not about something to be new made. Anubhava avasanatvacha Brahma Vijnanasya. The very nature of Brahma Vijnana is that this thing which we know theoretically has to be converted to our experience. That is great Shankara has told. So what is Shankar Siddhanta? This is Shankar Siddhanta. Now, then she agreed. Now there where I went, the organizer was from some other ashrama, and a man from this Arsh people had come, their representative. There was another person from Chinmay Mission and myself. There they asked me again what we are going to speak. I said, I am going to praise Shankaracharya because. They did not listen because. Okay, you speak first. I spoke. After that Arsha Vidyalaya man spoke. And he said that, very clear terms please, no mystic experience should be expected. No mystic experience should be expected. And we cannot reach reality by different margas. We can reach reality only by Shankar Siddhanta. And he quoted one verse for his misfortune, and for my good fortune, he quoted one verse from Viveka Chudamani, in which there is a word Veda. If a man knows this, then this will happen. And he translated it as understanding. If a man understands this, this will happen. Then the other person was speaking, and I was insisting on the organizer, I want to speak again. I want to speak again. He told me, this is not a debate. I said, that is not the concern. He has criticized our mission. There is a right of reply. I must speak again. He made several arguments. I did not contradict any of his arguments, but I said, I want to speak again. I want to speak again. And he had to agree. And the two Shankaracharyas had not come to the meeting by that time. They neither have heard my first lecture or that man's lecture. But before I started speaking second time, both of them arrived and sat there. And I said that outright, this man translates Veda as understanding. We all understand Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. What happens to our life? Does anything happen? Veda is not understanding, Veda is knowledge. And then he has quoted from Vivek Chudamani. For your information, I have a selection of 108 shlokas from Vivekachudamani. Dealing, Vivekachudamani has 580 shlokas. Out of that 108 shlokas, exclusively deal with dhyana, samadhi and anubhav. And Shankar goes on to tell, like Sri Ramakrishna, न गच्छति विना पानम व्याधिर औषध शब्दता विना अपरोक्षानुभवम ब्रह्म शब्दैर न मुच्यते. By only telling about medicine, the disease will not go. Similarly, unless we have the direct experience, aparoksha anubhav, only telling the name of Brahman will not going to save us. And there are several such shlokas. He says the Guru will guide us. Aptaktim khananam, shiladupari utkarshanam. If there is gold, the man of knowledge should tell us here is gold. We have to dig and extract it. We have to burn it in fire to purify it. And so much effort we have to do to realize that value of that gold. Not only sitting outside and telling there is gold will help us. So like that, and the friends who had come with me, they all said that both the Shankaracharyas highly appreciated. When the meeting was over and I was coming away, the audience came behind me and said, Maharaj, what we said is true. Without experience, nothing can happen. Anyway, that is the incident I am telling. I am reminded of that because of two reasons. Somebody has sent me an email about the Arsh Vidyalaya and said it is confusing, is it not? Secondly, because Swamiji has made this point here, because Kathopanishad has made that point here, that reason does not take us anywhere. So that is what Swami Yama is telling, that which is beyond never rises before the mind of a thoughtless child deluded by the folly of riches. This world exists, the other does not, thinking thus, they come again and again under my power. To understand this truth is very difficult. Many, even hearing it continually, do not understand it. For the speaker must be wonderful, so must be the hearer. The teacher must be wonderful, so must be the taught. In two mantras, Katha has told us, so Swamiji has told this 2 times. Neither is the mind to be disturbed by vain argument, for it is no more a question of argument, it is a question of fact. What is fact? Fact of our experience. It is a question of fact of our experience. Today we are experiencing the world to be real, and we have to experience the world to be unreal, and we have to experience the reality. So it is nature of fact. Arguments will not prove anything. We have always heard that every religion, now another point comes here. Important point, we have always heard that every religion insists on our having faith. So a new point comes here. If reason cannot help us, can faith help us? Now, faith we call blind faith because we do not see anything. Now that may be right, that may not be right. So, Swamiji is giving it unbiased to you. Reason is useful. Reason can disprove those things which are wrong. So we must take recourse to reason. But beyond that it cannot go. Beyond that only the experience, heart of the experience will go. No reason will go. So when the faith is presented, we should apply reason and find out whether this is valid or not. But Swamiji says, why the religions are talking of faith, that we should understand.
Wait. Anybody is coming?
All argument and reasoning must be based upon certain perception. Perception is direct experience. Unless we have direct experience, on that data we can rationalize. But without that perception, how can anything happen? How can any religion take place? Without this, there cannot be any argument. Reasoning is the method of... Anyway, I was reading the complete, so let me complete. We have always heard that every religion insists on our having faith. We have been taught to believe blindly. Well, this idea of blind faith is objectionable, no doubt, but analyzing it, we find that behind it is a very great truth. What it really means is what we read now. The mind is not to be ruffled by vain arguments, because argument will not help us to know God. It is a question of fact and not of argument. All argument and reasoning must be based upon certain perceptions. Without this, there cannot be any argument. Reasoning is the method of comparison between certain facts which you already perceived. Yes, that has to be presented and we compare them. If these perceived facts are not there already, there cannot be any reasoning. If this is true of external phenomena, why should it not be so of the internal? That is the main point Swamiji is making. Because some religions say, oh no, religion, you have to only believe. The chemist takes certain chemicals and certain results are produced. This is a fact. You see it, sense it, and make that the basis on which to build all your chemical arguments. So with the physicists, so with all other sciences, all knowledge must stand on perception of certain facts. And upon that we have to build our reasoning. This is the clear mandate. Reasoning will not take us to the ultimate is one thing, and reasoning without data is meaningless. But curiously enough, the vast majority of mankind think, especially at the present time, that no such perception is possible in religion. That is the great obstacle. Swamiji is not asking us to believe, but there is something behind that belief that Swamiji is going to show. So he says that in religion, why the same thing will not apply? Unless there is perception, how we believe? No such perception is possible in religion. That religion can only be apprehended by vain arguments. Therefore, we are told not to disturb the mind by vain arguments. Religion is a question of fact, not of talk. We have to analyze our own souls and to find what is there. We have to understand it and to realize what is understood. This is one way. Apply ourselves to understand what is the truth and then experience it. That is religion, Swami just clearly said. No amount of talk will make religion. So the question whether there is a God or not can never be proved by argument. For the arguments are as much on one side as on the other. Do you know this? Swami Vivekananda would argue in the Varanagar Math one day vehemently that God exists, and the next day he would put equally solid argument to say God does not exist. Then somebody asked, what is your opinion? Then Swamiji said, remember, so long as we have desires, so long only we have a doubt about whether God exists or not. That was the final answer. Argument side, both strong. Swamiji knew and Swamiji has given both. What is your actual opinion? Swamiji says, so long as we have desires, doubt will always exist. That means when there is no desire, God is an evident fact. No question of argument. Desires. We have been listening in Maya lecture, this lecture also. So long as we have desires, we do not see the reality. Mind becomes externalized. Mind becomes bound to the five senses. How can reality come there? But if there is a God, He is in our own hearts. God is not sitting outside. Have you ever seen him? The question as to whether this world exists or not has not yet been decided. We perceive the world, but our perceptions are all distorted. So how do you say the world exists? And the debate between the idealist and the realist is endless. Idealist means believing that only ideas exist, they are seen in outside world. And realist says the reality is there, so we have ideas. And the debate will not end because none of them is true. The debate will not end because none of them are true. The truth is that there is reality, one without a second, which appears as ideas and which appears as the outside world. So between ideas and outside world, how the debate will end? Because the reality is beyond both. Yet we know that the world exists. That means we are seeing that it goes on. We only change the meaning of words. What is idea and what is reality, we change and we argue. So with all the questions of life, we must come to facts. There are certain religious facts, facts of higher experience, beyond our senses, but they are facts of experience. Swamiji called them religious facts, which as in the external science have to be perceived, and upon them religion will be built. Religion has to be built upon experience of supersensuous facts. Of course, the extreme claim that you must believe every dogma of a religion is degrading to the human mind. Dogma means some theory without any proof, even logical. So that is very degrading. The man who asks you to believe everything degrades himself. He has lost the sense of reason, he has lost the sense of actual experience. And if you believe, degrades you too, because you are also losing the same thing. The sages of the world have only the right to tell us that they have analyzed their minds and have found these facts, and if we do the same, we shall also believe, and not before. That is a very important point Swamiji is making. The sages have realized by undertaking certain methods, and they are telling those methods to us, not only the final results. So hypothetically we can believe, and we proceed on those methods, and when we realize, then that is the final proof. Then we have the final belief. And not before. That is all that is there is in religion. But you must always remember this, that as a matter of fact, 99.9% of those who attack religion have never analyzed their minds. They have never proceeded anywhere. Just like without procedure, faith is wrong. Similarly, without proceeding, criticism is wrong. Have never struggled to get at the fact. So their arguments do not have any weight against religion any more than the words of a blind man who cries out, "You are all fools who believe in the sun," would affect us. We are up to this point, but I reread because we have to get the proper connection. There is one great idea to learn and to hold on to, this idea of realization. That is the great idea, hold on to. The turmoil and fight and differences in religion we'll see only when we understand that religion is not in books and temples, it is an actual perception. So, Swamiji takes up another point, why there is quarrel between religion. One side believes in some dogma, other side believes in some dogma. But when we get experience, we find there is no quarrel. In actual experience, there is no quarrel. Only the man who has actually pursued God and soul has religion. There is no real difference between the highest ecclesiastical giant. Ecclesiastical giant means giant in the logic of religion, theory of religion, who can talk by the volume, and the lowest, most ignorant materialist. We all are atheists, let us confess it. So long as we all mean, so long as we have not experienced the truth, we are atheists. We are non-believers. Because if we believe in God, we should have got to Him. Mere intellectual assent does not make us religious. That is the Swamiji's main point. So where will these arch people stand? By intellectual assent on Shankar Siddhanta, there is God. It would have been so easy, but it is not so. Swamiji has said religion is difficult. This is Shankar Siddhanta. We have already dealt here, if you remember, the book whose very title was Aparokshanubhuti. And there Shankar has given his clear ideas. Vakyavritti also we read and Vivekchudamani also we read. We are all atheists, let us confess it. Mere intellectual assent does not make us religious. Take a Christian or a Mohammedan or a follower of any other religion in the world. Any man who truly realized the truth of the Sermon on the Mount would be perfect and become a God immediately. He will become God. One who has realized the truth given in Christ's teaching called Sermon on the Mount. Yet it is said that there are millions of Christians in the world. What is meant is that mankind may at some time try to realize that sermon. That is the meaning of Christian. Attempting to realize that sermon. If they are not attempting, they are not Christians. Not 1 in 20 million is a real Christian. 1 in 20 million. So in India, there are said to be 300 millions of Vedantins. 300 millions of Vedantins. But if there were 1 in 1,000 who had actually realized religion, this world would soon be greatly changed. We are all atheists, and yet we try to fight the man who admits it. We are all in the dark. Religion is to us a mere intellectual assent, a mere talk, a mere nothing. We often consider a man religious who can talk well, but this is not religion, like me. Now he is quoting from Vivekchudamani here. Wonderful methods of joining words, rhetorical powers and explaining text of the books in various ways, these are only for the enjoyment of the learned and not religion. Vivekchudamani. Vagvaikari Shabdachari, remember. Religion comes when that actual realization in our own souls begins. Then religion starts. That will be the dawn of religion, and then alone we shall be moral. Another very important point. I was born and brought up in Arya Samaj culture. And they do not believe in any experience. And they were the highest moralist of those days. Highest moralist of those days. My school teachers, I still hold them to ideals in their life. Later on, when I came to Chandigarh, I am not afraid of taking names. The principal of DAV college was charged with corruption. And when I went there, they used to invite me for every 15th August and 26th January. And when I talked about life free from corruption, after the tea, at the tea time, the professor asked me, is it possible in the modern times? I said, it is better to die than to be corrupt. So what has happened to the morality of Arya Samaj? Because they did not try for experience, this morality cannot stand. That is what Swamiji is telling here. change of character, transformation of character is possible only when the consciousness has changed. Otherwise, it will be outside only. And outside things do not stand when temptations or difficulties come. That is the main point. I am not trying to criticize anybody, but we are trying to follow Swami Vivekananda, who is trying to raise our consciousness, and we must follow. That will be the dawn of religion, and then alone we shall be moral. Now, we are not much more moral than the animals. See, Swamiji talks so directly. We are only held down by the whips of society. If society said today, I will not punish if you steal, I will not punish you if you steal, we should just make a rush for each other's property. It is a policeman that makes us moral. It is social opinion that makes us moral. And really, we are little better than animals. Wow. Strong words indeed, but Swamiji is not condemning humanity. It wants humanity to rise above. We understand how much this is so in the secret of our own hearts. So let us not be hypocrites to show from outside that we are moral. Let us confess that we are not religious and have no right to look down on others. We are all brothers, and we shall be truly moral when we realize religion. Then we will be moral. No special effort will be required. Character will change. The expression for this is that transformation of consciousness and transfiguration of personality. So when the consciousness is transformed, the personality is transfigured. He is a different man now. He is moral. Now the other side. In Kathopanishad, Naisha Tarkena Matir Apaneya, that Swamiji has explained up till now. But Shankar says there is a part Veda. Naisha Tarkena Matir Hapaneya. That's Shankar has taken there. Swamiji is taking now. Let me read. If you have seen a certain country and a man forces you to say that you have not seen it, still in your heart of hearts you know you have. So when you see religion and God in a more intense sense that you see the external world, Aproksha Anubhuti, Sri Ramakrishna told Swami Vivekananda, I see God, I see Him as directly as I see you, but 1,000 times more clearly. 1,000 is only a word. So that is what Swamiji says here. In a more intense sense than you see this external world, nothing will be able to shake your belief. So let them argue God does not exist. It will not shake your belief because you have seen Him. Then you have real faith. So now from faith, Swamiji has brought to the real faith. Faith born of experience is also called faith. And faith in the beginning is at the most an hypothesis. We must apply reason also there. But when we realize, arguments also will not change us. That is real faith. And it is this real faith, Swamiji's wonderful way of understanding all religions in their true spirit. That is what is meant by the words in your gospel. He who has faith even as a grain of mustard seed will change the mountains. Correct. So this is that real faith which will change the mountains. Then you will know the truth because you have become the truth. Realize the truth means become the truth. Then only you know the truth because you have become the truth. This is the watchword of Vedanta. Realize religion. Shankar Siddhanta. No talking will do, but it is done with great difficulty. Difficulty always means you have to go deep in your own personality. Now Swamiji has come to That mantra in Kathopanishad, Gudam Anupravishtam, Guhahitam Gauvareshtam Varishtam, Adhyatma Yoga Digamena Devam, Pashan Janma Mrityu Jahati. So it is deeply hidden in the recesses of everybody's heart. And through Adhyatma Yoga, that means yoga is not holding the nose. Yoga means the method for realizing God. Based upon, Adhyatma means based upon the very nature of the reality, there is a method of realizing God. That is called Adhyatma Yoga. And when we realize the Devam, the consciousness there, then all our problems will be solved. This is what Yama is telling Nachiketa. He has hidden himself inside the atom, Gudamanu Anupravishtam. This ancient one, Puranam, who resides in the inmost recesses of every human heart, the sages realized him through the power of introspection. That is how Swamiji puts Adhyatma Yoga. And got beyond both joy and misery. Beyond what we call virtue and vice. Joy and misery depend upon virtue and vice. Beyond good and bad deeds, beyond being and non-being, he who has seen him has seen the reality. This is Nachiketa. When Nachiketa hears this, he puts his question in a new form. Anyatra dharmad, anyatra dharmad. Anyatra asmat kruta krutat. Anyatra bhutacha bhavyacha yattat pashyasi tadvada. And that is what Swamiji is translating here. Because he is having the Kathopanishad in his hand. Beyond what we call virtue and vice, beyond what we call virtue and vice, beyond good and bad deeds, beyond being and non-being. Okay. He who has seen him has seen the reality. But what then about heaven? Yeah. It was the idea of happiness minus unhappiness. That is to say, what we want is the joys of this life minus the sorrow. That is a very good idea, no doubt. It comes naturally, but it is a mistake throughout. Because there is no such thing as absolute good, nor any such thing as absolute evil. So heaven and earth can be temporarily enjoyed, and if you enjoy heaven, you will have to go down to hell. If you realize hell, you will again come up. So that cannot be the final solution. That Swamiji explains in a practical way in our life. Swamiji's Jnana Yoga is really wonderful. It has all the power to elevate our mind. You have all heard of that rich man in Rome who learned one day that he had only about £1 million of his property left. He said, "What shall I do tomorrow?" and forthwith committed suicide. £1 million was poverty to him. What is joy and what is sorrow? It is a vanishing quantity, continually vanishing. When I was a child, I thought if I could be a cabman, it would be the very acme of happiness for me to drive about. I do not think so now. To what joy will you cling? This is the one point we must all try to understand, and it is one of the last superstitions to leave us, that we want joy. Everyone's idea of pleasure is different. I have seen a man who is not happy unless he swallows a lump of opium every day. He may dream of a heaven where the land is made of opium. That would be a very bad heaven for me. Again and again, in Arabian poetry, we read of heaven with beautiful gardens through which rivers run. They are all in the mind. I lived much of my life in a country where there is too much water. Many villages are flooded and thousands of lives are sacrificed every year. That is what is happening these days. So my heaven would not have gardens through which rivers flow. I would have a land where very little rain falls. Our pleasures are always changing. If a young man dreams of heaven, he dreams of a heaven where he will have a beautiful wife. When that same man becomes old, he does not want a wife. It is our necessities which make our heaven. And the heaven changes with the change of our necessities. If we had a heaven like that desired by those to whom sense enjoyment is the very end of existence, then we should not progress. That would be the most terrible curse we could pronounce on the soul. Is this all we can come to? A little weeping and dancing, and then to die like a dog. What a curse you pronounce on the head of humanity when you long for these things. That is what you do when you cry after the joys of this world, for you do not know what true joy is. This also Yama is telling Nachiketa that you are not drawn out by the temptation. For that this Swamiji is reading. What philosophy insists on is not to give up joys, but to know what joy really is. The Norwegian heaven is a tremendous fighting place where they all sit before Odin, Devata name. They have a wild boar hunt and then they go to war and slash each other to pieces. But in some way or other, after a few hours of such fighting, the wounds are all healed up and they go into a hall where the boar has been roasted and have a carousal. And then the wild boar takes form again, ready to be hunted the next day. That is much the same thing as our heaven. Not a bit worse, only our ideas may be a little more refined. We want to hunt wild boars and get to a place where all enjoyments will continue, just as the Norwegian imagines that the wild boar is hunted and eaten every day and recovered the next day. So this is all only in the mind, idea. Now, philosophy insists that there is a joy which is absolute, which never changes. That is what is called Shivam. There is a joy which is never changes, and that is called Amritam. That joy cannot be the joys and pleasure we have in this life. And yet Vedanta shows that everything that is joyful in this life is but a particle of that real joy. Because that is the only joy there is. Only joy there is in our own real nature, in the one without a second God. That is the only joy. Everything else is a reflection, or as Upanishad puts it, particles of that joy. Every moment really we are enjoying the absolute bliss, though covered up, misunderstood and caricatured. So Vikruta Sukha we are enjoying, caricatured. Wherever there is any blessing, blissfulness or joy, even the joy of the thief in stealing, it is that absolute bliss coming out, only it has become obscured, muddled up as it were, with all sorts of extraneous conditions and misunderstood. But to understand that, we have to go through the negation of. All the joys are there, but they are all caricatures. We have to first negate. We do not want this joy. We do not want this existence. And this negation will lead to transcendental reality. And then we can look at the world through that eyes and we'll see everything is only Brahman manifested. That Swamiji has seen in the life of Sri Ramakrishna and he himself and amongst all his disciples. And thus he is able to explain it to us. But to understand that, we have to go through the negation and then the positive side will begin. We have to give up ignorance and all that is false. wrong knowledge. And then truth will begin to reveal itself to us. When we have grasped the truth, things which we gave up at first will take new shape and form, will appear to us in a new light and become deified. That means go beyond the world, see the reality, and through that eyes, when you see the world, you will see the reality itself has expressed itself through the world. Deified, that is God, become God. They will have become sublimated, and then we shall understand them in their true light. But to understand them, we have first to get a glimpse of truth. We must give them up at first, and then we get them back again deified. We have to give up all our miseries and sorrows, all our little joys. So in Nachiketa asked second time, the Yama is replying now, that which all the Vedas declare, which is proclaimed by all penances, seeking which men lead lives of continence, I will tell you in one word, it is Om. We will find this word Om praised very much in the Vedas, and it is held to be very sacred. Swamiji is not explaining it here, but telling in the Vedas it is held more secret. Tatte padam sangrahena bravimi Om ittetat. We stop here. Further reading of the Kathopanishad, leading to what Yama taught Nachiketa, how Nachiketa realized it, we shall take up on the next term. I regret if anybody is hurt, but I have to tell the truth, following Swamiji, so I told about everybody. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shamtam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hare Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanam.